I can't live up to this glowing description, so I think that Susan will have to come out and read it again. I can't believe it. I'm very honored to be amongst such a company of poets, and I bring you greetings from the nickel capital of Canada to the political capital of Canada. And I'm bringing with me 2 books. This is my new and selected poems, Something Blue and Flying Upwards, with poems selected from my previous published books of poems, and a collection of short stories, The Camera and the Cobra, which has that Pen O. Henry story in it. In my first 2 years in Canada, I was trying to get acquainted with the new environment and new animals. And one summer I was in the backyard with a big pile of books about the meaning of life, as I was supposed to be teaching philosophy. And I was getting bored by the books and more interested in a noise coming out of a bucket beside me in the yard, which I'd been using to clean up after a dog. And when I looked in the bucket, there was a cricket in there rubbing its arms and legs together. The sound was magnified, and I felt sure that it was telling me about the meaning of life, but in a language I didn't understand, but I should write down. Because being one of the people of the book, I thought I should write this down, this ancient wisdom. And it might have been in Aramaic or Sanskrit or Ojibwe. And this was the first poem I had published in Canada, but it was a form of plagiarism because it came out under my name. I didn't know the name of the cricket. So although president of the league 2 times, I have committed plagiarism. Sermon of a cricket in an empty bucket. Crick, cack, crick, o crack, o fu, o crosolo, o solem, socra, oloim, acrosazi, chimbolom, jeda, zambizi, zucchini, ikriki. Zida, ikriki, zida, jiputi, jelam, zigzago, zero, zenana, Zulu, Zagreb, aka, krakau, Picasso, krika, Picasso, krika, piccolo, kripa, kraka, fu, jig, chicka, chick, Zion, jug, jug, jug. That was written down phonetically, what I did seem to hear. Our youngest son was brought up, although my wife and I tried to do very good co-parenting, he was brought up by a cat called Genghis. And eventually, when our son was 5 or 6, the cat died. And I wanted to comfort my little son, and I wrote a memorial poem, which is a poem for children, but I really like it, because as you can tell, I'm about no older than 10 years old inside. And now I've retired from philosophy, I can admit it. This is the Song of Genghis the Cat, and kids in schools love to hear this because it has the word bum in it. Genghis's brain is an elastic band in his head. Genghis sleeps on a shirt tail for a bed. Genghis dreams in orange of the sun by the shed. He's lord of the kingdom of tall grass and washing line. Genghis's eyes are electric zaps in the night. Genghis flies his tail as high as a kite. Genghis skins paper bags in a fight, and he's lord of the kingdom of goldenrod and butterflies. Genghis's bum is a black hole in space. Genghis has a palace in an old suitcase. Jeepers, when he yawns, he disappears his face. He's lord of the kingdom of wardrobe and rocking chair. Genghis fires a machine gun for a purr when he licks out your ear like a health inspector. Genghis wears pajamas grown specially from fur, though he never did find where they put the zipper. He's lord of the kingdom of garbage bag and fish fries. Genghis the king, it's of you, you that we sing, who once tried to execute a ball of string. Genghis smiles the secret of the yang and the yin. Genghis keeps a fishing village under his tongue. Genghis breathes out squid scent from each lung. If you were closer, you would smell the squid scent. Genghis voted for his ears, although they're highly strung, and he's lord of the kingdom of back, porch, and houseflies. Genghis has the sun and moon walking in his eyes. He nails them 6 inches into anything that flies. Flowers bow down and serve him wherever he lies. He's lord of the kingdom of the skies. The cat lives on. He has mythic proportions. He's cheap to feed, though, as a myth. I get on better with animals than people. As you can see, I'm very introverted. I'm just putting on an act at the moment. I love the magic moment when interspecies communication takes place. You don't know what the animal is showing or telling you, but it is something, and you guess. Often I think the animals understand us better than we understand them. And some of the animals with brains much bigger and weightier and more convoluted than ours probably can't understand why we have evolved upon the earth at all in terms of what we're doing to it. I was out swimming in the deep ocean in the Galapagos collection of islands when unexpectedly I saw something very large below me. It was a hammerhead shark. So I thought perhaps I'll write the first poem about swimming with a hammerhead shark. Makes me seem very male and heroic. Or curious. I'll settle for curious, ladies, okay? Snorkeling off the Galapagos over a reef that combs its multicolored beards in the current. Suddenly, a hammerhead shark is hugely beside me, big as a greyhound bus, but all lights off, no engine audible. By fiat, the sea is made not just for, but of him. Fathoms turned to dark hide and swinging muscle, muscle to dark finned and mottled tide. His giant hammer sways from side to side. It drives oceans before it in long, sunlit, twisting nails. Spread-eagled among clanging anvils of gun-metal grey waves, foam flying like sparks, I wait to be hammered, forged, re-struck into an unwelcome new coinage. But all he does is swim in parallel, nodding slightly, tapping weeds gently into place along the surf lines, like a conscientious boilermaker, riveting shoals of Creole fish into their ripples. This is no knuckle duster of the deep. He rolls slightly to get a better look at me. His right eye is less of an eye than a question. This hammer queries shyly, but will not strike. He rolls more to make me entirely a question, then arches downwards. I would have wet myself, except being in the ocean, I was wet already. Come Friday, Remembrance Day, I'm going to be in the Sudbury Arena for the parade, which involves an hour of standing to attention on ice. So when that is finished, I hope for a whiskey with the Irish Regiment to warm me up. I have to say a few words and sing a prayer in Hebrew. And the few words are going to be about children who have died in major conflicts over several centuries. And here's a poem I've written about that in the rondel form. Sometimes I'm a formalist. Occasionally I write occasional poems. I should have a guitar accompaniment here, but it's going to be unaccompanied naked voice. Guitars weep most that cannot hide their eyes. Then a song is heard, although it was not sung. Strains of silence leap from under the tongue. The almanacs predict only surprise. By piano wire 10 children got hung. Guitars weep most that cannot hide their eyes. Then a song is heard, although it was not sung. Over the far woods startled blackbirds rise. Dandelions puffed seeds as the shadows swung. What are the broken arts? What are the broken arts we live among? Guitars weep most that cannot hide their eyes. Then a song is heard, although it was not sung. Strains of silence leap from under the tongue. Whatever is history using us for, fruit has fallen, yet the leaves are still green. Children are born, then only flies are seen. We keep on knocking, but cannot find a door. Shells that shrill by are entirely routine. What is our history using us for? Fruit has fallen, yet the leaves are still green. A piece gets lost from every jigsaw. What we once remembered is now foreseen. Plump crows on the battlefields, plump crows on the battlefields, glow and preen. Whatever is history using us for, trees have fallen, yet our fruit is still green. Maggots are hatched, but no children are seen. Hey! I've spent a life more amongst women than men. The men were away fighting at something called the front when I was bombed out of my pram, literally. I've been a pacifist ever since. My mother found me lying in the gutter. I've been there often since. I'm shaking my 2 small fists at the departing tail fins of a bomber from the other side. My diaper's full, naturally. And yes, I have been a pacifist, not 100%, because there are occasions when one would fight to save one's life or those of one's family under threat. I grew up in my grandmother's house, and here's a poem, Meet My Grandmother. Al Purdy liked this poem. He gave it a prize. He was final judge. He was my sometime mentor. Enabled me to accept rejection slips. He'd had so many, he said, he'd papered his whole kitchen wall with them and was now papering his dog. If he could achieve this, I would keep a pack of hounds, large dogs. Night flying. Each night, my grandmother prepared for flying the piano. 50 quick years ago, twin barrels were swiveled out above the keyboard and loaded with candles. Sandwiches and bramble jam scones were stowed in rows on the gleaming top of the instrument, with a large reserve teapot for use in emergencies. Then the huge machine stood poised and flickering in its hangar of firelight, invisibly shifting weight up its highly strung legs, awaiting the soft, sooty clouds that drifted away with our chimney. She would take her seat briskly, without any ceremony, pushing back black velvet cuffs to an exact calibration that only she knew of. The white lace collar was useful for higher altitudes. When her fingers kneaded the keys together, a motor spoke deep in the mahogany, usually with Liszt's Hungarian rhapsodies, and piano, stool, and my very own grandma rose fearlessly above the distant fields of our Turkish carpet, as I saluted stiffly in my sailor boy costume, and she floated out of the parlor window just clear of the rose garden, lurching higher with each crescendo, off behind the lines of every enemy, as only grandmas can do. She could land again only if I went straight to bed and dreamt her a flat and sunny field with a sailor-suited boy at the end of it. 50 years after her death, she still comes in to land on occasion, utterly unabashed at no longer being alive, tugging down her cuffs and handing me a heaped dream of hot jam scones. I did eat a good supper, but I'm strangely feeling hungry. Food seems to creep into poetry inadvertently. My mother, I can still hear her voice in my ears when I'm writing, when I'm not. She was a great storyteller, reciter of poetry, taught me the music of language. My father taught me how to tell tall lies in the form of tales, very amusing ones. My mother, at weekends, she dusted photos on her mantelpiece, then readjusted them carefully, edge to edge, sons working on different parts of the globe, brothers in retirement on different sides of the grave. She was tracing the length of the tip of the nail on God's little finger as it dipped and moved in our lives. As a widow, she baked raisin bread just once a week. Her two hands kneaded patiently in the mixing bowl, and her other two hands she held in silent prayer at her chin, so that yeast throughout the universe would work well with an absolutely even distribution of raisins in life. My mother knew that at the end of a day, tired language must be put away like an apple pie and laid out for watering mouths the next morning. Then miracles can be described and so continue to occur, including the not inconsiderable miracle of words in thick cream for breakfast. As a philosopher, as I was, and I'm never quit, I guess, I often look at philosophy sections in bookstores and find, strangely, they're next to a section for occult books about the wisdom of crystals and the truth of reincarnation. I don't buy those books because I'm very skeptical about claims to be reincarnated from some great warrior or king. I'm sure if there is such a thing as reincarnation, I am the reincarnation of horse thieves, more likely than anything else. So I feel very at home when I visit Australia, and of course they'll say, "Mate, we're all descended from horse thieves. They shifted us out here for jail." So here's a poem, in case you wonder about reincarnation and who you are reincarnated from. Don't be overproud, be humble. 5 signs that you are not the reincarnation of someone famous. Whatever you may think, you're wrong if you think you're the reincarnation of someone famous. I have it from the muses. They can't be wrong. Australian accent for this one. In heavy rainstorms, when dust turns into clumps of silvery clay, you feel a need to mix them with straw, make bricks, and build something very large and triangular. When you dream of 7 fat girls followed by 7 skinny girls and try unsuccessfully to make love to all of them, no psychiatrist is interested in interpreting your story. Winos in the street walk determinedly toward you, holding out mugs of water. But they pass you by and head for a man carrying a bag of loaves, a box of fishes. While working under the sink to unblock the drain, with garbage bags softly caressing your face, you have an irresistible urge to hand brushes to anyone who's painting a chapel ceiling. As you sip warm beer on the stoop, wondering with an enraptured variety of gestures whether to be or not to be, a dog runs up and pees on your foot, simply and undeniably. You realize this is an answer, like the damp log that burns as it must on a roaring fire, like the window that, even though dirty, lets in both dark and light. A last poem to introduce you to my grandfather and his armchair, with a decaying Irish accent. After reading the day's newspaper, he would fold it irrevocably, rasping each crease razor sharp with a rusty fingernail, then raising himself elaborately on one leg and a multitude of elbows in a meticulously choreographed romantic ballet, lodge it securely beneath the cushion of his seat. No one else could get at it. When a day had looked through him thoroughly, its words were over for everyone. Though his wife sometimes secretly threw newspapers out at night, his armchair went on rising imperturbably. Sitting down became for him indistinguishable from effortlessly standing up. Reclining vertically and almost motionless each day, he was nevertheless undeniably going somewhere, edging off from the corners of our sight. He hovered eventually about as high as the mantelpiece, with all the thoughtlessness life constantly demands from us, keeping his balance perfectly because he took it entirely for granted, falling and breaking a hip only when walking anxiously on the aggressively firm concrete floor. Eventually, for his visiting grandchildren, he spoke from the top of a mysterious tower of rustling racing results and railway disasters, just his white hair shiningly visible to them in the after-school gloom. For these grandchildren, he never quite died, but simply levered himself off through the attic window one night between their visits, raising himself layer by yellowing layer above the apple trees, until the cloud that he humorously called his own hair drifted majestically away with all the white periwigs of the other prophets.